Hello, saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird.
Welcome back, Weirdos, to History for Weirdos 100th special episode.
I was going to say we're back, and then you were saying welcome back.
I know.
So we sounded clunky. But what a perfect way to start episode 100 than being totally offbeat.
I know, right?
But here we are with our very special 100th episode of History for Weirdos.
I mean, can you believe that we're here?
No, I really can't. I never would have thought we'd get to 100 episodes.
So for our folks who follow us on Instagram, you already know that we're recording at a special place. But for everyone else, we're actually recording this episode in Spotify studios in downtown Los Angeles.
Thank you, Spotify.
Thank you, Spotify. They were very nice enough to let us come in and record in a professional studio, i.e. not in our
living room.
Exactly.
Or our
I
kitchen
couldn't
table.
even say it. I started laughing.
Yeah, we're not
Or your parents' bedroom.
Right. We're not in our living room or on our dining table recording. We are in an actual studio here on the Spotify campus. It is so cool. I mean, we are going to share pictures on Instagram. So if you don't follow us already, now's your chance. At History for Weirdos on Instagram so you can see this really cool setup that we have going today. So perfect for such a special occasion.
It is. I mean, I'm a little at a loss for words because when we started this whole thing, I'm being very reflective right now, obviously. And I don't think it ever crossed my mind that we could get to this place.
Yeah.
That was never even a consideration. It's not even like, oh, I don't think we could do it. It was just beyond our scope.
Totally. We just went into it for the fun of it, which is, I think, a great reason to start something.
Yeah.
Because look at where we are now.
Look at
Spotify.
Look at me now, Mom.
Hi, Christy.
Well, actually, and that leads us to our very first question.
Oh, yes. Well, let's give folks a little overview of what's going on today.
That's probably for the best.
Before we jump right in, we are going to be answering some questions that folks submitted on Instagram. And then we're going to jump into some weird history stories from you all, from the weirdos, from our listeners. And we are so excited to answer your questions and to share these awesome emails that we got. So this episode's a little bit different for that reason. It's our special episode. And I think now we can jump right in.
Right. And one more thing to add. We had so many responses from you guys. This is going to be split into 2 episodes.
This is definitely going to be a 2-parter.
Yeah.
But that's great. More content for you all. Made by the weirdos for the weirdos.
I know. It's pretty special.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. Like, honestly, my heart swells with gratitude, not to get too cheesy, when I think about all of you who wrote in either a question or a story. We really appreciate you guys.
Oh my gosh, we appreciate it so much. So thank you to everyone who's making these 2 special episodes possible.
I know. Okay. Well, shall we start it off?
Yeah, you kick us off with number 1.
Okay. So, very first question. What made us want to start a podcast together?
Yeah, I think you're really good at telling the story. We've told it before.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to share?
I don't know. I kind of want you to share, actually. I think you're really good at sharing it. And also, let's be real. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This was her idea.
Oh, thanks, babe. My idea, maybe, but you definitely are the person that executes on the idea. So I appreciate that. So from my perspective, how long ago was this now?
This was in the fall of 2019, so pre-pandemic.
Yes, pre-pandemic times. I was in graduate school, Andrew was traveling for work every single week. So I really missed him. I was always busy with school. He was always busy with work. And pretty much my main company at the time, in between like studying and field practice, was podcasts, right? We all love podcasts. And one day when Andrew is on a flight home from his latest work trip, I had kind of like a lightning bolt moment. I thought to myself, wait a second. Lots of people start a podcast with their best friend. Why can't I start a podcast with my best friend? And then the wheels started turning in my head, and the idea really just kind of flowed for History for Weirdos with the name and everything for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I emailed it to him just kind of in like a frenzy. I was like, what do you think? Should we do it? And then on your end,
On my end, I was like, oh, hell yes.
that was pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. I mean, even the name, that was you.
Mm-hmm.
Because we wanted to originally share weird history stuff
Yeah.
and weird history stories and stuff. And it got to the point where it's like, well, that doesn't really have like a great name to it. And then Stephanie's just like, what about History for Weirdos? And then boom.
Actually, it came to me. The name came when I sent you the email, I'm pretty sure,
Oh, yes, it did.
from the beginning.
Yes, no, you're right. I found this email actually relatively recently.
You did?
I did. And I was rereading it, and in it you gave a couple examples, and one of
Okay,
them
yeah.
is History for Weirdos. You're right.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And so basically, we're very different in a lot of ways, Andrew and I.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we both love is history and stories and weird stuff, I guess.
It's true.
So that was the foundation for this podcast, History for
know.
Weirdos.
Such a great question.
And here we are. Okay. So, number 2, I feel like we already answered this today, but
Yeah.
question number 2 is, did we ever see the podcast coming this far? No.
Yeah, simple answer is no. And it's, again, not because we didn't believe in ourselves. It just wasn't even in our scope of understanding. I think that's the best way of
Totally.
putting it.
This is better than we could have dreamed. We'll
Yeah.
just put it that way.
Yeah. Okay, question number 3. Favorite mythological creature? Oh, such a good question.
That's a good one.
That one's tough. So I think I was in 4th grade and I was on a soccer team called the Blue Hydras. I'm not
Really?
even joking. This is 100% true. And so I think one of my favorite, if not my favorite mythological creature is a hydra.
A blue hydra?
A blue hydra at that. And if you don't know what a hydra is, it's a sea monster that has 6 heads, and you cut one off and then 2 more sprout out from it.
Oh, that would be such a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I know.
Hercules fights a hydra, right?
Hercules fights a hydra. I think Odysseus, no. Take that back. I actually don't know about it. I don't think it's part of the Odyssey. Never mind.
But I'm sure it's come up in more than just Hercules' story, because that's quite a creature.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Hydra's a cool one. For me, I'm such a cheesy romantic. It's always been, ever since I was a kid, I've loved the Phoenix.
I knew you were going to say that. It's
Yeah.
because of Harry Potter, isn't it?
No, I
Or
think
is it
it
even
was
pre-Harry
I
Potter?
think it might be even pre-Harry Potter. I was a strange child, you guys.
She was.
I was a very odd child, and that makes sense, though. And I remember having the idea really young to name my future kid one day. We're not naming our child this, but at the time I was convinced I was going to name my kid Phoenix because, and I remember telling my mom, and she's like cooking in the kitchen, and I'm like, Mom, one day I'm going to name my child Phoenix so that they know they can always rise from the ashes.
Oh my God, that's so unbelievably cheesy, and I love it.
Yeah, and she was like, okay, can you help me like peel these tomatillos now?
Like, couldn't care less.
She couldn't care less.
You know, actually, speaking of mythological creatures, though, I do like the griffin as well. And that would actually be a good first name. Griffin?
Yes. We can't use that one either.
No, we're not going to, but
We can't, I don't know what griffin is in Spanish.
griffin.
No, definitely not.
Okay, next question.
Will we ever be doing a video podcast?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
Um,
we don't know.
we don't know. Simply put, we really don't know. I want to,
Yeah.
possibly. A lot would have to happen, I think, before we could get to that point.
Yeah, Andrew's a big proponent of it. To be totally transparent, because it's you all, this is our community, I get a little nervous thinking about it. Just because, feeling like, can I keep doing the podcast in my robe and slippers now? Or do I need to actually put
Yeah.
on clothes and pants? I feel like there's going to be a little bit more effort in multiple ways, right?
Right.
The logistics of it is going to be a learning curve.
Mhm.
So we're totally open to it. We think that's a great way to connect with you all and to grow. But for now, it's TBD.
Yeah, we're going to put a pin on it. Okay, so next question. Will we be doing more History for Weirdos trips after Italy? Also, I think the answer is the same. We don't know.
Yeah.
If anything, though, I think probably leading towards, like, it's just not in our forecast.
Yeah, not that we can see at the moment.
Right.
What a great Q&A so far. The last two questions, our answers are we don't know.
We don't know.
But those are the honest answers. We don't know. I think we've all experienced this in the last few years. So much can change so quickly.
Right.
So we're always open to opportunities like video and trips and stuff like that, but we have to see.
Yeah.
We have to wait and see.
But in short, like in the next 18 to 24 months, probably not. I think that's probably fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And the next is, do you like episodes focused on people or events more?
I know. I saw this question, and that one really got me thinking. And God, this is such a consultant answer, but it depends.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on a few things. Like one, even like how I'm feeling that day, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I'll tell you this. I think it's easier to do one on a person because their story is so much more linear, right?
Totally.
Whereas an event, you have to look at it from a few different angles, even if it is just an event that it's like within a microsecond, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like a day. It's all within, it's like you have to look at it from multiple angles, and it can be hard to research at times and piece together like a narrative.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Sometimes people, though, depending on the person, can be really tough.
That's true, too.
As well, because maybe the reason that they're a good subject is that their life involves multiple events, like big events, or I don't know how to explain it. I really think your consultant answer is a good fit. It depends. Sometimes I feel like it's easier to do an event, and sometimes I feel like it's easier to do a person. It's just the content, I guess.
Right. It really comes down to like what event is it or what person is it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I mean, sometimes with a person, like we just did one on Ashoka the Great, and it's really hard to do like in antiquity, it's really hard to do something from the East because there's just a lot less resources and a lot less like writing about them. So the sources are so Spartan that it's really hard to kind of piece that together. So yeah, I guess long-winded answer, me saying it depends.
It depends. I've loved researching and listening to you share both.
Yeah, same.
All right, let's see. Did I just ask or did you just ask?
You just asked that, so it's my turn. Have we ever tried any weird or super old recipes?
You know what? We kind of did.
Yes.
We didn't make it, but we purchased it. This is an old-timey thing to consume around the holidays. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Wassail.
Yes. We tried wassail. That sounds like it's fake. It's not.
It's not. We swear it's real.
I think it's a British holiday punch, like around Christmas time.
Right.
And they mention it a lot in
A Christmas Carol.
A Christmas Carol.
Which is a play that I've seen a dozen times at least, going back to when I was in elementary school.
Yeah. And they have a song in the play about like wassail.
Yes.
And so we were really curious to try it, and we got it. Pre-made. We don't know how to make it. We don't know the recipe. And babe, what was your take on wassail?
A thumbs down.
Yeah, it was a thumbs down for me too.
It was not good. We ended up throwing the rest. We had like one cup each. It came in a jug, and we just tossed the rest. It was that bad.
Yeah, it was pretty gross.
It
was
not the best.
Aside from wassail, it's not a weird recipe by any means, but a super old recipe that we've made from scratch is we've made tortillas from scratch together.
That's true.
And that is a very ancient recipe.
Yes, and there's also a food that many Americans eat every single day that you might not know is actually incredibly ancient, and that's minestrone soup. Comes from Italy and is about 3,000 years old.
Yeah, that's right.
So, like Iron Age Italy. So it's
Mhm.
very old. And then also, if you're curious, I have to plug this because I'm like obsessed and I want to make this myself. We haven't made this yet, but you can make. There is a It's one of the oldest recipes I think in the world that we know of. You can make Sumerian style beer.
Yeah, that's not a we thing.
That's gonna be a me
That's
thing,
gonna be a you thing.
especially since you don't drink.
Yeah, I'm gonna opt out of the labor of making Sumerian beer if I
Yes.
can't even drink it.
But you can. The recipe is online, and
Yeah.
you can actually make it, and you can make it in the style that the ancient Sumerians did. And I really want to try that.
Have you seen like any videos or pictures of it?
I read articles. There was this one classics professor who made it in like 1988. He was the first one to do so because he,
First one to do so since the ancient Sumerians.
yes,
maybe?
thank
Yeah.
you. Yes, in modern times, I should say, because he was the one who, I guess he's not a classicist, but he's a ancient historian, and he decoded Sumerian.
That's so cool.
He's one of the few people, and so he decoded this. I shouldn't say decoded; he deciphered, I guess is a better term. But he made the beer, and he did say it was quite good. And they didn't have hops back then,
Mhm.
so that wasn't found in ancient Mesopotamia. So they had to use something else. So it's not very hoppy. It's a little bit flatter, and you can eat part of it. It's not just liquid.
That's what was going to be my question isn't it chunkier?
Yeah, much chunkier, and it had all the nutrients that you need to survive.
Yeah, I know it was throughout the ancient world, it was a breakfast food.
Yeah, breakfast food is even a form of currency, like in ancient Egypt as well.
Cool.
It's kind of amazing.
So keep your eyes and ears peeled for Andrew's definitely solo project
Yes,
of recreating that recipe.
100%. Okay, next one's on you.
All right. If we could meet anyone from history, who would it be and why? And then a sub part of this question is, what would we say to them? I should have prepped for this one. That's a really hard question.
That one's tough. You want me to go first on this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is such a basic answer, but I think Julius Caesar.
I thought you were going to say Jesus when you said it was basic. And then I heard
Probably
the
a better
J.
answer.
Instead of Jesus, you thought of Julius Caesar.
He's just such an enigma of a human being. It's like someone who could care so much about people, yet also commit like what we would consider today genocide, you know?
Yeah.
And it's to me, it's kind of like, hey, like how do you justify this in your head, man? But also, I mean, he shaped the course of Western civilization. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think I would just want to know like kind of like what goes on through his head. And like how do you view the world that you live in?
Mm-hmm.
Just try to understand like where he's coming from.
Is that related to what you would say to them, or is there something else you'd like to say to him?
I would say, yeah, watch out for your buddies, by the way, on the Ides of March. That's such a nerd joke.
Watch your back.
Yeah, watch your back, buddy.
Yeah, that's a really good one. This is so tough for me. One that comes to mind, I don't know if this is like the ultimate one,
Mm-hmm.
but it might be. I'd really love to meet Vincent van Gogh
Oh,
or Van Gogh. I actually don't know how you say that. I hear people say both. I would absolutely love to meet him. He's one of my favorite painters of all time. I think he was a beautiful soul. And I would tell Vincent van Gogh just how much his art means to me. That I love it and I love his work.
yeah, I'll always remember that scene in Doctor Who.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. If anyone's a Whovian here, you know what we're talking about. There's this really beautiful scene in an episode of Doctor Who where Vincent van Gogh, he didn't die without selling a single painting. I think that's like an exaggeration. He did sell paintings, but he was not by any means famous. He was definitely mocked and ridiculed for a lot of like his mental health issues and things like that. So he died thinking he wasn't successful. And obviously now he's one of the most successful artists of human history. And in this episode of Doctor Who, the doctor brings him to the present and shows him like the Van Gogh exhibit in a museum. And Vincent van Gogh just like loses it. He's so happy to see so many people enjoying his art.
Yeah. Okay, we're moving on. Next question.
We're not crying.
We're not crying. Okay. So, how did we meet? And did it have anything to do with history?
We're not that cool. I wish it did.
I really wish it did.
I wish we met in like a history class or something.
No, the story is actually kind of pretty basic, if anything. We were a blind date.
Yeah, but kind of old school nowadays, I guess.
I guess that is kind of old school. Yeah, it was 9 years ago.
Not a lot of people meet of our generation or younger on blind dates, but we were a blind date. My sorority in college was throwing its annual end of the year luau party in Malibu. Very fancy.
Very fancy.
I thought I was going with a bunch of my girlfriends, and they were all like, "What are you talking about? We all have dates. Don't you have a date to go to this party?" And I was like, "No, I do not have a date. I guess I should get on that." And I was talking to one of Andrew's fraternity brothers, actually, who was a friend, and he was like, "Oh, I know someone you could go with." And that's kind of it.
That's kind of it, yeah. And then I did propose at that very same spot in Malibu.
Yes.
A year and a half-ish later.
Yeah.
So it worked out, I think.
I think 2 years later. No?
No, it was about a year and a half.
Okay. I don't understand time.
Yeah.
As someone who has a history podcast. Time in my life, my own timeline, I'm blind to it. But yeah, that's how we met. And you were about to graduate. That was the other thing I was going to say.
Right. I literally was about a week away or 2 weeks away from graduating.
It was almost like we just caught each other.
Yeah.
At the tail end, because he's a grade above me. We're 10 months apart in age. So I had another year left at USC, but I got you right at the end.
Yeah, I know. And I was a cradle robber.
Yeah, totally.
Totally, 10 months.
Okay. Next, who are our favorite historical figures and why? Should we each stick to one?
Yeah,
or do we?
That's a really tough question.
That's like an episode length question if we
I
really
know.
wanted to get into it and nerd out.
Okay.
Okay,
I
wait.
have a favorite.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. I think my favorite, at least in modern times, because if you include ancient, it's too many. But modern times, I'm gonna say Theodore Roosevelt.
Oh, that's such a good one.
He is. I mean, one, he's just such a, excuse my French, badass dude. He really was.
Le badass.
Le badass. He was really into nature.
Yeah. Big animal lover.
Big animal lover. I mean, obviously the teddy bear comes from him. He established the national park system. He had a lot of integrity. I really admire him. And so I think for those reasons, he's probably my favorite.
Yeah. He was an environmentalist before there were environmentalists.
Right, exactly. He saw how beautiful these national parks were and like, let's preserve them. Let's just not develop them.
Yeah, let's keep the nature pretty and clean and for the animals. Yeah.
And he had a lot of pride in America, but not in like a weird kind of way. In
Not like
a
an overly nationalist way.
Right.
Uh-huh.
It was like he like cared about the people and animals and like the countryside, and he just wanted to preserve and to like make things better.
Yeah.
And I really, really admire that.
I love that. That's a really good one. Someone that comes up for me is someone that I plan on doing an episode on one day.
Ooh.
So I'll do just like a brief overview of her. She is known as, in Mexican history, as La Malinche.
Oh, I know La Malinche.
Yes, she was an indigenous woman in Mexico. I can't recall the name of her tribe at the moment, but she ended up translating. She was brilliant with languages. She'd hear a language and pick it up. And she met the Spanish, she met Cortez and his men, and she translated for them. And the reason she's one of my favorite figures isn't because I know too much about her as a person, but because she's such a controversial figure in Mexican history.
Mm-hmm.
She's long been painted, I think, outside of context as a traitor to her people, to the indigenous people of Mexico. But I think from the bit of research that I've done, and I want to do more for an episode, I think her story is much more complicated and layered than that. And I'm just going to say it. I don't like women being blamed for men's actions, right?
I know it was Cortez who was like kind of the POS, right?
Yes, he absolutely was. Why are we mad at this woman who was doing what she could to survive? They ended up having a child, or at least one child together.
Who's like the first Mexican.
That's what we call them in Mexico. Yeah, their child is seen as the first Mexican. So just a really interesting figure. That's probably one of my favorites. Do you have another one that you want to say?
Well, I kind of favorite is kind of a more
Yeah.
like it's a hard word to like when
Define.
to define, especially when it's like in a historical concept because like
Mhm.
I love Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great.
Mhm.
I love Trajan, Hadrian especially.
I was gonna say Hadrian.
Yeah, like a lot of there's a few Roman emperors, and then there's even like a couple of like other like ancient generals as well. I admire Cyrus the Great.
Uh-huh.
Um, Specifically, he was the first Achaemenid Persian emperor,
Mhm.
Shah, I guess, and he really believed in religious freedom in a time where that was not typically valued. And he created the greatest at the time, greatest empire in the history of the world, in part because of that, right? In part because of his military victories and his genius. But part of that genius was just allowing people to live,
Mhm.
and it worked.
Yeah. Those are all really good ones.
Yeah.
Just to list off a few more that come up for me. Sacagawea,
Oh, great one.
really cool. That would be a cool episode on Sacagawea. Her journey, so interesting.
Oh my God.
I love, this is basic. All the ladies know. Fascinated by Marie Antoinette. Again, favorite is an interesting term here, but just fascinated by her life and the kind of what she represents, as well as also super basic
Mhm.
Anne Boleyn
That's a
and
good one.
her sister. All of Henry VIII's wives, I think, were so interesting. Not because of him, but almost like in spite of him.
Hmm.
So there's too many. There's honestly too many historical figures to name.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. So next one.
I lost track of who's asking what.
I don't remember, but I'm just going to ask this one
Okay.
because it's addressed to
Oh,
me.
yeah, it is.
Andrew, did you ever buy the illustrated version of Frankenstein for Stephanie? So short answer is yes, I did, but only because I saw this question and then I immediately went to Stephanie and be like, which one did you want again? And then she pointed it out and I bought it for her. So that's that.
Thank you, dear listener. Thank you, dear Weirdo, for getting me, finally, my illustrated, annotated version of Frankenstein.
It's literally because of you that she got that.
It's going to be so fun to read that during the spooky season. Oh, my gosh.
Oh my gosh, you should do like a little like live reading for like on Instagram or something for the Weirdos during October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weirdos, you let us know if that would be interesting or if that would bore you to tears.
Let us know.
Okay, next is, how long does it typically take to research episodes? And a subpart of that is the process enjoyable? I think it varies. We've said that for so many answers so far, but it's true. I don't track the time. It might be beneficial now that I'm thinking about it to track time for this, but I'd say it takes a few days to research and to piece together things, and the process is enjoyable. I love the research aspect. I will say something that stresses me out sometimes is the pressure to then piece together all the research in an entertaining way.
Right.
How about you? Do you know how long you take?
I mean, first of all, before I even answer that, like, yes, I agree with you 100%. I love the research.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I hate actually like writing the episode itself.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure as a husband of a writer, you love this.
Yeah.
You love hearing that answer.
No, but it's hard.
It is. It's really
a
hard.
challenging thing to do.
For the exact reason that you said, like piecing together a narrative. When all the sources say the same thing, that's when it's kind of easy, but it's still a little bit hard because then you have to ask yourself, what am I missing? What are all these folks missing? And it makes me kind of go down the rabbit hole, which I actually enjoy a little bit. So I'd say it's still difficult in a different way, but I enjoy that part. The time where it's really difficult is when sources either A, differ, or B, they pick up at different places, or like they'll say, or both, even a combination of the two, which I've had before. And so you really have to just look at everything, look at like half a dozen sources, putting like this piece, source A says this, source B says this, but source C has both of these here, but then also like a differing part towards the end. And you really kind of have to just piecemeal it together in a way that's really interesting.
Yeah, you said that really well. Something else that comes up that I think is just, I don't know, it's the product of the times that we live in. We're not going to the library anymore to research things, we're doing it online. Is when you find something that's really interesting, but no one else mentions it.
Yes.
So then you're wondering, like, wait, is this accurate? And it's
Right.
really hard to verify, particularly because we don't have a ton of time. It's like a couple days' time
Yeah.
to string it together. That happened to me a lot recently, actually, with the episode I did before this one, the mysterious death of old Hollywood actress Thelma Todd. There were a lot of really interesting, like, tidbits or theories all over the internet, but if they weren't repeated, I was being conservative with it and I just wasn't including them. So that part can be tough. But overall, I'd say to answer this question more succinctly, overall, it's a really enjoyable process.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. The most controversial question we have so far
Oh my gosh.
is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh my goodness. I think. No. I think no.
So
I think hot
in
dogs.
spirit, I agree with you. I think
What?
because, but like, okay, technically, technically, yes, because there's two pieces of bread that you're putting together, but they are connected though at the bottom.
They
So
are.
if they're not connected, then technically yes, because there's meat and then two slices of bread, right?
Is that what defines a sandwich?
To me, it does.
So then would a hamburger be a sandwich?
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe because, like, technically, okay, sandwich is like an overarching category, and
Yeah.
then there's segments of that, right? Like a traditional sandwich, and then a hot dog and a hamburger, where it's like, colloquially, it would be weird if you called it a sandwich, but like technically it is.
Maybe. I could see that.
Like, that's the way I look at it, but I would never ever like
Ask
go
for a
out.
hot dog sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. They look like you're an asshole. You know, pardon my French, but it's true.
I think hot dogs are not even in the subcategory of sandwiches. I
I
think
respect it.
hot dogs are their own category. And I don't eat hot dogs. I eat veggie dogs. I was vegetarian for a really long time. This might actually not be something the weirdos know. I was vegetarian for almost a decade.
Almost a decade. Wow.
Like 7 years, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I was dating her at the time when
Yeah.
she was, even we were engaged even for a bit.
I was a vegetarian at our wedding.
Yeah, okay,
When we
never
were
mind
married,
then.
yeah.
Yeah, we were even married for a little bit.
Yeah. But something that has stuck from that time is I don't eat hot dogs. I eat veggie dogs.
That's true.
Mhm.
I've never seen you eat a normal hot dog before. Now that I think about it.
Nope.
Nice.
It's not going to happen. Okay. Next up is, what is the weirdest place you've ever learned about?
So I don't know about weird, but the strangest, creepiest place is we did an episode on it, Povelia.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
And I just love it has like a little bit of like ancient Roman, I guess, yeah, like late antiquity Roman history all the way to the present.
Yeah.
You know, and it's had so many different lives, which, you know, if you know anything about like Italian history and I think even Greek history as well, like a lot of buildings are like that.
Yes, definitely. That's what's so cool about Italian history in general.
Right. And I mean, specifically, we're talking about an island, but I think that place freaks me out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's my answer.
My answer is a place that you did an episode on,
Ooh.
but I'm forgetting the name of it, and I feel so embarrassed.
Okay, give me some clues here.
I believe it's located underground. It's
Oh,
those
Darren Caves.
Darren Kuyu Caves. I just could never say it. That's it.
Yeah.
I thought that was so weird and so interesting, and I have such a desire to go see it for myself.
That was the hardest episode I've ever researched.
Really?
Because I was covering things that go back to the late Bronze Age all the way to the 20th century.
Well, you did it beautifully. Let me tell you.
Thank
It was
you.
really good.
I appreciate that.
It was such a cool thing that I had never heard of ever before you.
And what I absolutely just love about that is it was rediscovered after being inhabited for like over like 2,000 years, almost 3,000 years.
Mhm.
It was rediscovered because some dude was he kept on missing like
Oh,
a
yes.
livestock or some sort of animal,
They
and he
kept his
knocked down
chickens
a,
or something?
yes, chickens. I think
Uh-huh.
that's what it was, and he knocked down a wall and just found this insane cave system because he was
Behind
doing
his
some
home.
renos. Yeah,
Mhm.
on his house.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of incredible.
Okay, let me see here. Did I ask the last one?
Yeah,
I
you
can't
just
keep
asked
track.
that one. So
Sorry, weirdos.
what is one historical figure or event that we haven't covered but want to?
Ooh, I've alluded to a couple,
Yeah, you answered that already.
but there's someone else that I want to do some research on is Chavela Vargas. Chavela Vargas was a Costa Rican singer and
Mhm.
songwriter who ended up going to Mexico in her youth, and she actually became like a Mexican folk icon.
That's
And
awesome.
she is rumored, I'm pretty sure it's almost certain that this happened, though, she was a lover of Frida Kahlo when she was married to Diego Rivera.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, that's one that I want to do some more research into. How about you?
That's such a good question because I honestly don't know.
I know and you know what? We were just discussing this before we sat down to record. We have an archive of amazing recommendations from the Weirdos that we're going to better organize because you all recommend some awesome, like, haunted places, vampire places. I mean, you're going to see in a moment when we go over your short stories, your short weird stories. There's a lot of really good ones out there.
There are. I honestly I can't answer that right now. None. I mean there are. I just like they're just not coming to me
Yeah.
at the moment.
That's all right.
If I think of it later on, I'll let you guys know. But for now, we're gonna move on.
Yeah.
Okay. So what historical books do we recommend?
You go first because you read more historical books than I do.
I do. So specifically, if you're talking about Roman history, I have like literally a half a dozen that you can go. But I think the one that I would want to share is SPQR by Mary Beard.
I had a feeling.
Yeah, that one, it's a classic for a reason because it covers what she calls like the first millennium Romans. So roughly like 750 BC to when all Romans were given citizenship under 3rd century AD. I forgot his name.
That's all right.
He was Septimius Severus's son.
Okay. Would you say that this book is accessible for someone who's not as big of a Roman history buff as you?
You know, yes and no. There's just a lot of names and that are given, and so that it can get a little confusing at times. But I'd say overall, it is. If you have a little bit of an understanding beforehand, though, I'd say that definitely helps.
And the thing with so many Roman names is everyone named their kids after,
Gaius.
or their daughters Agrippina.
Yeah, I know.
Everyone has the same name, so it is hard to keep them straight.
It does. Yeah, the Julio-Claudians were awful with that.
Yeah. Actually, there's a book, speaking of historical books, that I really want to read that's about Agrippina. Let me see if I can look it up really quick while we're here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, also another book that isn't Roman that I think people would like would be, oh my God, and then now the name's just escaping me. Of course it does. There's one on, I'm just going to give another Roman one because the other one just came. But it's not really necessarily a historical book. It's Memoirs from Hadrian by Marguerite Sidecar or something Carr.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, she writes Hadrian's like private memoirs and into like a story, and it's really interesting. I really like that.
It's Memoirs of Hadrian by Marguerite Yourcenar.
Yourcenar, that's what it is. Okay, thank
and
you.
The one that I want to read, it's on my TBR, is Agrippina, the Most Extraordinary Woman of the Roman World by Emma Southon. That one sounds so good. I'll read you guys since I have my Amazon open. The little synopsis. Sister of Caligula, wife of Claudius, mother of Nero.
Oh my gosh.
The story of Agrippina at the center of imperial power for 3 generations is the story of the Julio-Claudia dynasty and of Rome itself and its bloody, extravagant, chaotic, ruthless, and political zenith. Doesn't that sound so good?
It sounds so good. The Julio-Claudians, so that was like the first like set of Roman emperors. They were nuts.
They were nuts. Yeah.
They were nuts.
And then I don't read as many historical books as Andrew, as I mentioned, but I love historical fiction. That's my sweet spot right there. I'm sure I've recommended it before. This is a really popular book, but The Song of Achilles.
Oh, so good.
It's incredible. It's written so poetically. Madeline Miller, anything Madeline Miller writes, you weirdos will love it. I can guarantee that. And then another one is, I have to look it up. It's called What the Wind Knows, but I can't recall the author right now. It's What the Wind Knows by Amy Harmon. This one's very different because Song of Achilles is very ancient. It's talking about myth and lore, about Achilles and Patroclus. What the Wind Knows is a time travel historical fiction book.
Oh.
Going back to Ireland in the 1920s. It's really beautiful that this woman, Amy Harmon, knows her history really well. She brings to life actually some real historical Irish figures. And it's a love story. And it's going to break your heart into a million pieces.
Nice.
So definitely check out Song of Achilles and What the Wind Knows.
Also, I remember the other book. It's an ancient history book as well. It's literally just called Sparta. Like, how did I forget that? I'm really annoyed with myself. But it's just called Sparta. I got it from my grandmother's library.
Ooh, fancy.
I know, right? She's just like, take any book you want. I was like, okay. So I snagged it. This one's mine now.
Yeah. And now, Weirdos, we are going to move on to reading some of your weird history stories.
Ooh. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so our very first listener story. Good afternoon, Andrew and Stephanie. First of all, congrats on the podcast and doing such an amazing job week in and week out. Only podcast I consistently listen to. Oh
my gosh. That's such a huge compliment.
I know. Okay, now for the topic at hand. Growing up and living in Philadelphia my whole life, history is quite literally everywhere. Very true. But I have always been interested in Eastern State Penitentiary since I grew up half a block away from it and think the rest of the community would find it interesting. It being the very first institution of its kind in the world from both an architectural and behavioral standpoint. Their semi-professional baseball team of inmates, Al Capone's time spent there, and a dog that was on death row. No harm was done, inmates tunneling out and ended up in a bathroom of a local school. And not to forget its annual Bastille Day celebration, where tasty cakes are tossed throughout the crowd of people.
Okay, this sounds amazing. Also, I also thought that the baseball team name was the Al Capones.
I know.
When I read that.
Oh, I am so disappointed that...
No, that's even funnier.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. So I know this was supposed to be short, and I apologize for the long-windedness of the email. Don't worry about it. I'm way more long-winded. I couldn't choose one, but choose one of the many things about the penitentiary. I find these the most interesting, though. And that was from Eric.
That is so interesting. So there was a dog on death row. What could the dog have done?
I know. Maybe it was an accident. Do you accidentally put a dog on death row?
Yes, I feel like the government would do that.
The government would do that.
That was awesome, Eric. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, next up. This one just jumps right in.
All right, let's hear it.
In 1965, the Lincoln Historical Society was given the bell of the original Mattanawoc Academy after the building was torn down. The bell has its own special story told in a December issue of the Lincoln News in 1965. And then here it has quotes. Like, it's a paragraph that's all quoted. Several of the older Lincoln residents can remember when the bell was rung for the start of each school day, for recess, noon hours, and the close of school. Town meetings were held in the high school each spring, and the bell was always rung for this annual event. When the old high school was torn down, the bell was stored in the firehouse on East Broadway. As time went on, with the adding of new equipment to the firehouse, more room was needed by the firemen, and the bell was placed outside at the rear of the firehouse building. Okay, we keeping track of the bell?
Yeah.
In about 1942, at the time when Fred Gates was police chief, the bell was stolen from its location in the back of the firehouse. Hooligans. It was reported to Mr. Gates, but it had been missing for approximately 2 days when it was discovered to be gone.
Oh, no.
Upon notifying the authorities in southern Penobscot, I don't pronounce that right, county, it was traced by an authority, and it was located in Bradley in the woods on the side of the road. It was reported by this authority that the bell had been turned into several junkyards and the thief or thieves had tried to sell the bell, but no one would buy it.
That's amazing.
Mr. Gates, upon being notified of the recovery, went down to Bradley and identified it. He had to identify the body of the bell. And it had a town truck sent to Bradley to bring it back to Lincoln. Oh my gosh.
That is so funny. All that effort over a bell.
And this story was from Riley, but who the heck thinks to steal a bell and sell it for parts?
I don't know. Like, was it made of like bronze or something? They melted it down.
I feel like maybe they would have had to melt it down. I wonder if the junkyards were saying no.
Because they knew.
Because they knew, oh, I've seen this bell, this is stolen. Or because it's like too much of a hassle.
Right.
Very interesting.
Very interesting indeed. Okay, so next one we have here is, I believe, from Troy. And he wrote in, "Hey there, my name is Troy." Okay, so I was right. I actually reached out to you guys with a little story a few months ago about a Nike missile explosion in the area I grew up in.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know if you remember, Weirdos, but we did post on our stories and on our feed that we did go to the Nike missile base here in Los Angeles. Really cool stuff. And that's what he's referring to. If you want to use that story, that's awesome. I do have another one to throw into the ring. So did you know that the founder of Lego, named Ole Kirk Christiansen, started the company back in the 1930s, but he had a lot of setbacks. For one, no one was buying toys. It is the 1930s, the Great Depression, so that makes sense. So he would go to the grocery stores and trade his toys for food.
Oh, wow.
Man, yeah, that was a rough time. The purpose was to try to protect children from the war that surrounded them.
Oh,
His toy factory even burned down twice.
jeez Louise.
I can't imagine having the resilience to rebuild from scratch, let alone back into an industry that was difficult to succeed in at that point in time. Very true. All Lego employees actually have to watch a video about the beginning of Lego before they start working there. It's kind of cute. Thank you for giving me and everyone else the opportunity to share a weird piece of history. You guys are awesome. Oh, thanks, Troy.
That was so cute. Wow. And Lego is such a like a recognized name.
Yeah, iconic.
Yeah, to think that it almost didn't happen many times, it sounds like.
Wow.
This is a reminder, weirdos. Don't give up on your dreams.
Yeah, don't give up.
Okay, next up, it starts with, "Happy 100th episode. I'm excited to hear it, including your Q&A." And then it goes, "The haunting murder would still fill whispers around campfires and create legends passed along the wooded trails more than 80 years later in my local coastal town nestled in the shadow of the Olympic Mountains."
Okay, I love this already.
This sounds so good. "Growing up just a few minutes away from Lake Crescent, west of the outskirts of Port Angeles, I was a child that heard the tale for the first time. I heard it at night on the atypically crystal clear lake where they found her. Oof. The Lady of the Lake was Haley Latham Illingwood. 3 years after her disappearance, her body floated to the surface of Lake Crescent, wrapped in blankets and tied. The case was more haunting and mysterious because her body had not decomposed.
After 3 years?
Due to the uniqueness of the lake, her flesh had turned into a soap-like substance that could be scooped away like putty, and that was in quotes. Wow, that's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Thankfully, due to her dental records and quite the investigation, her body was identified. She had been strangled by her husband, who had covered her disappearance. He was brought to justice, charged, and held accountable for his actions.
Good.
Thank goodness. And then they provide a source for historylink.org with more information about the Lady of the Lake. That was really interesting. And they say, "Thank you again," from Angie.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, Angie.
Wow. To 3 years.
3 years, and the fact that her body didn't decompose. I'm guessing if it's crystal clear, that means maybe like salt water, or
I don't know.
I have
That's
no
really
idea.
interesting. I'm gonna look into why that would like what would need to exist in a lake to preserve something like that.
I know they found like ships from antiquity
Mm-hmm.
in like shipwrecks that were not, and all ships back then were wood, right?
Mhm.
So, and they didn't decompose anything in the Black Sea, if I recall correctly.
Because of the salt, that would make sense.
Right.
But most lakes are freshwater, aren't
Correct. Yes.
they? This is a head scratcher.
Yeah, there's something about the chemical composition of the water in certain lakes that like can preserve it for
That's
quite
so strange.
I mean for years or hundreds of years or even thousands of years.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of wild. So, next one goes, "Hello. Congratulations on 100 episodes. Thank you. History for Weirdos is by far my favorite podcast, and I'm so excited to see it hit this milestone.
Aww.
Literally, like every time I read something like that, it makes my day.
Yeah.
I saw you were collecting stories for the episode and just wanted to send in a bit of my family history for consideration." Absolutely. So my name is Charlotte. I'm named after my great-grandmother who passed before I was born, but she is still one of my biggest heroes. She was born Charlotte Budensick in 1923 in Brooklyn, New York, and that's also where she started to work as a fashion model later in life.
Wow.
Interesting. She had a strong career going, but then the U.S. joined World War II. She decided to leave modeling behind in order to join the WAAC.
Oh, okay.
That's like the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps, if I recall correctly. She would later be awarded the key to the city of Brooklyn for her sacrifice.
Oh my God. That's a big deal.
That's so cool. Your dad was born in Brooklyn.
My dad and his mom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So during the war, she was put on the radios that transmitted to the pilots, and I've been told there were more than a few instances where the pilots would flirt with her over the communications.
I'm sure.
That's amazing. I mean, if you were my counterpart and I was a pilot, I would definitely flirt with you.
Oh my gosh. I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime. Ultimately, though she fell for my great-grandfather, Navy Warrant Officer Lawrence E. Rust, they were married in December of 1944. Great-grandma Charlotte had a beautiful singing voice, and after they were married, she sang with an army band under the stage name Rusty Lawrence after her husband.
That's so cute. Oh my God.
She sounded so cool.
Yeah.
After the war, they had 2 children, one of whom grew up to be my nanny, who has told me stories about growing up around diplomats and other higher-ups, since great-grandma Lawrence didn't retire from military service until 1971.
Wow.
He and great-grandma Charlotte even attended both inaugural balls of President Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Oh, wow.
That's really cool. They both passed away before I had the chance to meet either of them, but because great-grandma Charlotte died only a year before I was born, and because she is my namesake, she's always had a special place in my heart. I admire her life and accomplishments so much, and even though this summary was a short speed run of her life, I wanted to share what a special woman she truly was. I hope you enjoy this piece of my family history, and I wish you both well as you continue with amazing content. Charlotte. P.S. The life and career of Nellie Bly would make an awesome episode if you ever need an idea for a podcast.
Charlotte, thank you so much for telling us this family story. That was so cool.
That was really cool, Charlotte, and I'm glad that we could share the story of your great-grandma.
Yeah, your great-grandparents sound like badasses.
They really do.
Okay, next up. Hi, guys. I have a weird local history suggestion from my hometown of Dixon, Illinois. While Dixon is mostly known as the hometown of Ronald Reagan, and more recently we've been in the news for the Rita Crundwell scandal. I'm not familiar with that, are you?
I'm actually not familiar with that either.
I'm going to have to Google it.
Okay, I'm going to Google it right now. So yeah, keep on going.
Okay. Dixon has a strange road with a dark tale.
Ooh,
Bloody,
I like this.
Bloody Gulch Road. I'm not sure how much detail you'd like, as I'm sure the info is available online, but there was a gory murder and the truth is still debated. If you'd like more information, I can see if I can find the book a local author wrote and send it your way. Thank you for your consideration. Stay weird, Jessica.
Oh, Jessica, thank you.
Jessica, we're going to look into your hometown.
Yeah. Also, I looked up Rita Crundwell.
Mm-hmm.
She's the former comptroller and treasurer of Dixon, Illinois, from 1983 to 2012. It's a long time. And the admitted operator of what is believed to be the largest municipal fraud in United States history.
Rita.
Rita.
You messed up, Rita. Oh my gosh.
I mean, not in a good way, but kind of badass.
Yes.
Not in a good way, though.
I'm absolutely going to look into Bloody Gulch Road. I feel like we got a really good teaser here,
Yeah.
and we could turn this into a full-blown episode.
Yeah, Bloody Gulch Road. I really like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
You're
so
up next, babe.
I'm up to Andrew and Stephanie. My favorite Greek-Roman myth is the story of Psyche and Eros, involving magical arrows, an angry goddess, a betrayal, a quest, apotheosis, and a happy ending.
Oh.
That is Greek mythology in just like a nutshell. I
Except
love
for
it.
the happy ending.
Oh, you're right. You're right. The happy endings rarely happen. It's originally from a story called Metamorphosis, the Golden Ass, by oh my god, I love that, by Lucius Appius from the 2nd century CE or AD. It's also the quote only ancient Roman novel in Latin to survive in its entirety, end quote. I
Wow.
didn't know that. I've known about Metamorphoses, but I didn't know that that's the case. That's really cool. So in the Golden Ass, a guy named Lucius gets turned into an ass. And that's a donkey, by the way, guys. And in the middle of it, he and another girl are kidnapped. An elderly woman decides to tell them a story to calm them, which happens to be the tale of Psyche and Eros. The Golden Ass has a Wikipedia page that I couldn't find in here, but it's wild. This podcast is my absolute favorite, and it's deepened my interest in history, so thank you for everything. From Madeline.
I love that. Psyche and Eros is one of my favorites. Actually, when we did our episode telling Greek myths, I almost picked Psyche and Eros.
Ooh.
So it's a really good one. If it's been used, like reinterpreted throughout stories for so long, but if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it.
Awesome.
Okay, next up. Hi, Andrew and Stephanie. I wanted to ask to know more about your bird.
Oh.
And if it does tricks or talks, etc. Birds are so fascinating to me and their behavior is so silly. I wasn't expecting this, that's why I'm cracking up. Okay, before I move on to their story, our bird, Delta, she does talk.
She does.
Mainly, she says Delta.
Or Delta step up.
Which is like her trick, I guess, which is to step up on her fingers.
Yeah, when she's really angry, but she's not screaming her like head off, and she just wants to like come out, she'll say Delta step up. She's almost conditioned me to the point where she does that, and I go in and I'll get her.
She's trained Andrew well.
She has.
That's for certain.
I know.
But aside from that, she could talk more. It's honestly on us that she doesn't. She's a green cheek conure, so they're not like the most verbal parrots or parakeets, but they can talk a little bit. And when she was younger, she used to say Delta pretty bird, especially when she'd look at herself in the mirror. But either her confidence has waned or it's age, because she doesn't say that anymore.
I know. Poor Delta.
But let me move on to the rest of this email. Okay. For a weird history story. As you know, the Romans heavily believed in the gods and their influence over everything. On many occasions of importance, even on the decks of their fleets, they were looked to for guidance and were called, quote, the sacred chickens.
The sacred chickens.
A priest accompanied them as a sort of representative of the chickens. During the First Punic War, a Roman fleet was looking to these chickens for guidance to launch a surprise attack on a Carthaginian fleet. The chickens eating the seed meant good omens. Not eating the seed meant bad omens.
It's true.
The chickens refused to eat. And in frustration, a magistrate said, if they will not eat, let them drink, as he orders them to be thrown off board. That's not very nice.
Yeah.
Ironically, they lost this battle really badly, and the guy commanding the ship was exiled because of the embarrassing loss. I wonder if we should start doing this again. Maybe the chickens will make better decisions for all of us, LOL. Thank you guys for being such a beacon of joy in my life. What you guys are doing is very special. Enjoy your day, Izzy.
Oh, thanks, Izzy. And I had heard of that story, and it is true. It is true. The sacred chickens were real.
Oh my god, that's amazing. It kind of makes me think of the chicken in Moana
Yes.
that goes with her on the boat. Like Is that really dumb chicken?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it goes with her on the quest.
And it's funny because the Romans loved birds because there was also they revered geese as well. There were geese at the top of the Capitoline Hill, and in 390 BC, the city of Rome was actually sacked.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first time that had happened. It was invaded by a group of Gauls known as the Senonans, and they occupied most of the city. The remainder of the holdouts were on the Capitoline Hill, like the tallest part of the city, and they blocked off like kind of like the entrance to it, and the invaders were scaling up like a cliff, and the geese just started going crazy and basically alerted the Romans that, oh shoot, these guys were coming, and knocked them off the cliff, and so they couldn't actually like get up.
The geese saved the day.
The geese saved the day, and so from that point forward, they were revered before that point, but they were like really revered, like even more so after that point. So like killing any of those geese that were on the Capitoline Hill was like a capital offense, like punishable by death.
They really like their poultry.
They really did.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Weirdos. We are wrapping up with our 100th episode, part 1. Stick around for part 2 with the remainder of your questions and your awesome history stories coming soon.
Coming very soon.
Thank you again, Weirdos.
And adios. Hello.
Thanks.
I know.
Is it recording right now?
No, yeah, it's recording.
Oh, okay.
Oh my god, I really want to use this as a button. Can we use it as a button now that we've said we're going to use it as a button? We're going to use it as a button.
That's a very self-aware button, but
That's
I think
super
it's still
self-aware.
a button.
It is.
How many times can we say button?
Button, button, button.
Okay.
This morning in the Atlanta airport, no one's missing a meal on Mac Wilburn's watch. With 11 restaurants to serve passengers, he's got dining for every destination. And it all started when Mac talked with First Horizon Bank about opening a franchise in the airport. Now it's open for business and cleared for takeoff. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Mac. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.